Guys, by now we've learned about VPN, SSH, Tor, and many security concepts like Diffie-Hellman, encryption, hashing. And now a logical next step is understanding secrecy, and especially forward secrecy. So that's what this video is all about. So I've built a small little presentation for you with about 7 slides. And even when we go through these 7 slides, this is just a 10,000 feet perspective. And it's just what exactly you need from a system design perspective. If you were to go any deeper, it would start entering into cryptography, mathematics, and security. Now, those are some things that I deal with in my day job, and it can get quite complicated. And you don't need to know all that from a system design perspective. So in this video, I'll just help you build an intuition about all of this. And this will give you a great foundational knowledge for what to do when building systems that need more secrecy. Now, this has a lot of use cases, and we'll look at the use cases very soon. But what does it exactly mean? So a protocol possesses forward secrecy if the compromise of a principal's long-term identity key, like RSA key or a private key or ECDSA key, does not compromise the confidentiality of past session keys. So imagine if a hacker gets access to your key right now, your private key. That does not mean that he'll have access to all the previous chats or all the previous keys or all the previous data that's been transferred through this network. And that's something called as forward secrecy. And that's really important. And that just means that you were able to contain how much damage that one particular attack from that hacker had on your entire system. And this is what makes a system highly robust and also enhances the availability of the system. So how do you attain forward secrecy? What does it require? It requires ephemeral session keys. So we looked at the ephemeral Diffie-Hellman algorithm, where the keys are not permanent, they keep changing. Ephemeral basically means something that has a short life. Also, you don't reuse your session secrets. You always have new secrets for each session. And you definitely destroy old keys. You don't store them somewhere where they can be tampered with or they can be copied. Now, if any of these 3 rules, they fail, the forward secrecy system collapses and the system quietly regresses. That means it's just more open to attacks. Now you must be wondering, why do you need to know this for system design? So the thing is, many modern systems rely on forward secrecy. So we learned about TLS. So TLS uses ephemeral Diffie-Hellman algorithm. You have server keys signing and it does not encrypting data. And you have past HTTPS traffic still remaining safe, even if the certificates leak. Tor uses different circuit keys per different hop. And circuits rotate every few minutes, and relay compromise doesn't expose the past traffic. So relay is, we learned about those nodes that forward the traffic from one node to another. That's called as relaying the traffic. And if there's a compromise there, it doesn't expose the past traffic that has moved between these same nodes. Similarly, messaging systems that we learn about in the future more in this playlist have double ratchet. They have keys that rotate every single message. And the compromise exposes at most the current or near future messages and not the entire previous chat. That would be devastating for the system design. And also, I'm sure you use AWS, GCP, and you use Cloud IAM for that. So temporary credentials, short-lived tokens, all of that, they all ensure forward secrecy. So as you can see, forward secrecy has a huge role to play in system design, and you have to be very deliberate about involving it in your system design. Now, the knowledge of security makes you more wholesome at system design as compared to someone else who's just focusing on all the other parameters, but not security. So let's look at another slide that adds more points to why forward secrecy is important for system design. So firstly, it helps you think about security in systems, and that's obviously something that we have agreed upon. But you also never let a single secret unlock long-term. And you see this everywhere in system design. Whenever you have API tokens, you have to keep them rotating. And your sessions need to keep expiring, and you'll have short-lived certificates, and you'll have ephemeral compute, and long encryption key rotation. So you see forward secrecy being used across multiple different stages of software engineering. So we've understood everything about forward secrecy, its use cases, why it's important to system design. Now let's talk a little bit more about how it works. So we assume an adversary who has recorded all past encrypted traffic, and at time t, they compromise the server's private key. In a non-forward secrecy system, they can decrypt all traffic recorded prior to time t. Time t is where the hack or the attack happened. And in a forward secrecy system, they just cannot do it. They cannot see any of the previous chat or history. So forward secrecy actually protects the past. Now it sounds like forward should protect the future, but it's not true. It actually protects the past. Now there's something else to protect the future chats, which is post-compromise security, which is what protects the future. So that's like self-healing after a key has been compromised. Modern protocols like the Signal protocol aim for both forward secrecy and post-compromise secrecy. Now, it might seem like forward secrecy is like an entire solution and it's a complete solution. And that once you have it, that's it. You don't need anything else. But the problem is it has multiple challenges. It has a lot of costs because you require more compute for key exchange. You have to manage state more. You have more complexity. It's very difficult to debug and it requires correct implementation. If you don't implement it correctly or you're not experienced enough, you might end up still not achieving forward secrecy. The other myth is that if you use TLS, you assume that you already have forward secrecy, but not always, because you can still have old ciphers, misconfigured stacks, and static RSA key exchange. So forward secrecy is very deliberate. It must be explicitly enabled. The other confusion or myth is that forward secrecy protects stored data. That's not true. Forward secrecy only protects sessions or whatever has happened in the previous sessions. If a private key has been compromised, the attacker will not be able to look at what happened in the previous sessions or in the previous chats or in the previous data transfer flow. So the stored data, it needs key rotation and envelope encryption. And that's a different problem. That's to do with databases, not to do with communication and protocols. So encryption and forward secrecy, again, are two different concepts. Encryption protects data from outsiders, whereas forward secrecy protects data from your future mistakes that can be exploited by attackers.
So I wanted to share something really interesting with you. A few months back, I started running an advanced system design cohort, which is specifically meant for people with industry experience who want to break into engineering leadership positions. So if you want to be a director of engineering, VP of engineering, or want a CXO title, you'd want to know a lot more about system design from the application perspective. And just the basics of system design, DSA, and coding will not cut it. You'll need to understand systems from end to end. You'll need to become an expert at architecting systems, understanding how things scale, and how to plan better for bigger, much more scalable products. And this is what we break down in my 3-month advanced system design cohort. There are 20 people already in the cohort. Some of them even have 25 years of experience in the industry. So if you think you've hit the limit in your system design learning and you want to take things to the next level and deeply connect with people who are just like you, people with great industry experience and exposure, wanting to move on to the leadership positions, you might want to check out my cohort. The link for the form is in the description of this video. Fill it up, we'll check if you're a good fit, and then we'll set up a call with you, and then we'll take things forward. Now let's get back to the video.
Now, an algorithm like the ephemeral Diffie-Hellman makes forward secrecy much more easier to establish. And in the previous videos, we've already talked about ephemeral Diffie-Hellman. I've already shown you how Diffie-Hellman works. So we won't get into the depth of this. In case you're new to this playlist, you just have to go back a few videos. You'll find Diffie-Hellman, ephemeral Diffie-Hellman, extended Diffie-Hellman, so all of those key exchanges. Right now in this video, we're just taking a quick look at it. So in the classical RSA key exchange, which is with TLS 1.2, the client encrypts the master secret with the server's public key. And I've explained this to you step by step in the TLS 1.2 handshake video. So you just have to go back a few previous videos and then you'll find the TLS 1.2 handshake video. And we've seen this very much in detail there. The server decrypts this, and if the server's private key is ever stolen, the adversary can decrypt the recorded pre-master secret and derive the session key. That's quite dangerous. But in the ephemeral Diffie-Hellman, the server generates a unique random pair of keys just for this session. For every session, there are new keys generated. Okay. And the server signing the public component G raised to A, we've already seen this math with its long-term identity key to prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. Okay, so we've seen this math where A is equal to G raised to A mod P. You send values like GP and A to Bob, Alice sends that to Bob, and Bob gets G raised to B mod P. So they both calculate different functions, but at the end, they come up with the same key when they apply this kind of a math, right? I've shown you how this works. So the exchange, the handshake proceeds and destruction, the server wipes A from memory immediately after the session key is derived. So these 4 steps, right, they kind of map to these 3 rules, which is ephemeral session keys, no reuse of session secrets, and destruction of old keys. Now, if you see that here, which is happening in the ephemeral Diffie-Hellman algorithm by default. So you're generating new keys for each session, signing those keys, right? And you're wiping those keys out. So that's basically directly aligning with how forward secrecy works. That's why the ephemeral Diffie-Hellman is so well aligned with that. Now I can create just a 3-hour session for you just on the elliptic curves and how that math works. But you'll find plenty of that on YouTube. And if you're not going too deep into the security rabbit hole from a system design perspective, all of this is all you needed to know. You don't even probably have to look at this slide, but we'll just go through it anyway. This is like a quick snapshot of what happens. But like I said, You can go deeper into this rabbit hole for hours and hours and just learn more and more about elliptic curves and how they work and all the algorithms that have been derived from it. So for the elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman ephemeral, which is essentially the ephemeral Diffie-Hellman algorithm that I was talking about, the computation relies on the hardness of the elliptic curve. Okay, so you have Q, a value Q is equal to D dot G, where G is the generated point on the curve. You can see G on the curve. D is the ephemeral private scalar, which is random, and Q is the public point. The shared secret is calculated by both parties. So S is equal to D of client and Q of server, which will automatically be equal to D of server dot Q of client. Because D of server is ephemeral and deleted, and capturing the long-term signing key allows the attacker to forge future signatures. But it gives them no mathematical way to recover the D of server or S from the past. So all I'm trying to show you from this slide is that it's mathematically impossible to actually get hold of one of the keys at time t and then have access to all the previous keys that have been exchanged, right? So all that you have to understand from this slide is just that even though both of the parties, like the server and client, are able to exchange keys and come up with the same computation, just because the hacker has some of the information and access to a private key does not mean he'll be able to calculate all the previous keys. That's all that I'm sharing from this slide. And like I said, if you want to go down deeper and understand exactly how it works with visualizations on the elliptic curve, there are a lot of videos on YouTube about it. From a system design perspective, this is all you need to know. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.